Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about diffusion. So diffusion is the movement of molecules. Molecules are constantly in motion, and they're always going to move from where they are to where they're not. So you have a concentration of molecules on one side of a membrane, and they're going to move back and forth across the membrane, but they're going to move faster towards the areas where they're not found. So you're going to have more motion down that concentration gradient. So remember, diffusion is a passive process. And it turned back to red, didn't it? It always turns to red. I think that's its common color. So it is a passive process. And it's moving down a concentration gradient. So think about molecules tend to be in solutions. So a solution contains both a solute and a solvent. The solute is the solid portion, so those would be like molecules in a liquid. And then the liquid itself is the solvent. So molecules move from higher to lower concentration down a concentration gradient. Those solutes move via diffusion across the plasma membrane. And so here you can see there are more of these yellow molecules than down here. And so these yellow molecules are going to move down towards the inside of the cell. So there's always movement in both directions. You'll always have some movement back, but the amount moving into the cell is going to be much greater than the amount moving out of the cell. In diffusion, the solute is what is moving. So in diffusion, solutes move. Yep, let's do that. Okay. So here's a picture of diffusion. Here we just put some dye. So think of like at Easter when you're getting ready to color Easter eggs. You put those little dye tabs into a container of water and vinegar. That dye is going to dissolve. That's the solute. So I'm going to put that here. Oh. And the liquid then is water mixed with vinegar. Okay, so this is the solvent. And that is an O, even though it looks almost like an A. I just have sloppy handwriting, sorry. So the molecules are going to move out away from where they are concentrated in all directions. They're going to move in every direction. But they're going to move faster away from where they are than back towards where they are. Eventually, molecules are going to be equally distributed. That doesn't mean there's no more movement. That just means now they're moving in equal amounts in every which way. So remember, molecules are always in motion. Even in ice, water molecules are still in motion, just very, very slow. So what are the types of molecules that typically diffuse? So gases are able to diffuse across the plasma membrane. In our lungs, we have gases that diffuse across the plasma membrane so that we can survive. So we need oxygen to go from our lungs. So this is what the alveoli of our lungs, those are the air sacs. I'll just put alveoli equal air sacs, okay? Oh, geez. Alveoli, really? ALVEOLI equal air sac. And the air sacs are where oxygen comes in. So we breathe air in. These alveoli get all this oxygen. The oxygen then moves from higher to lower concentration down the concentration gradient into the blood. At the same time, in our blood, there's a high concentration of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is going to diffuse faster out of our blood and into the alveoli. And so this is what we exhale. Other molecules that diffuse across the membrane are small, nonpolar. And so when I say nonpolar, that means non-charged, uncharged. So lipid-based molecules can go right through that plasma membrane. If you're very small and you're nonpolar, you're going to be able to fit through the plasma membrane. If you are polar, or if you are large, you're going to not get through that plasma membrane, and you're going to have to find another route. So remember, the plasma membrane is very selectively permeable. So there are different factors that influence diffusion and osmosis, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So temperature. If you increase temperature, there is a correlation to the temperature and rate of diffusion. So you also increase diffusion. So think about it. Water is constantly in motion, but if you pour water into a pan and you set it on a stove, if there's no heat on the water looks like it's standing still. It's still moving, but it's moving at a much slower rate. If you turn on the heat, as the water heats up, it starts moving faster until eventually it's boiling. That's how temperature influences diffusion. So increase temperature, you increase diffusion. And the same goes, if you decrease temperature, you're going to decrease diffusion. Okay? Pressure. So the more molecules, the higher the concentration gradient. So let me draw that. I'm going to draw it right here. If you have a concentration gradient like this, molecules are going to move, across the membrane from higher to lower concentration. But they'll move even more effectively if you have more molecules on one side than the other. So they move in both directions, like I always said, but if you have a lot more of any solute on one side, they're going to move even faster in one direction than the other. So electrical currents. There are a lot of cells that utilize electrical impulses to send signals. And in those cells, we have these special electrical gated channels. So these channels basically open up when something charges it. And then diffusion can move across those proteins as well as across the membrane, depending on what molecules are moving across, even more effectively. And then size. So smaller molecules are able to move easier across the plasma membrane. They can fit across. If you have something really large, it's not going to be able to fit through the phospholipid bilayer as effectively. But something really small is going to be able to go right across. I'm going to stop here and we'll talk about osmosis in our next video. Bye.